Alright, so let's talk about something a little uncomfortable. What it actually feels like to grow up in someone else's shadow. Not metaphorically, I mean literally. Like you're just doing your thing, figuring life out, and the world already decided who you are supposed to be because of your last name, your family, where you're from, or what people expect from someone like you. That's the kind of theme in all the characters I'm covering in this part of the video, like Boruto, Aang, Zuko, Shinji. Different worlds, different problems, but same weight on their back. The weight of someone else's expectations. But I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, sure, but these are fiction characters. Over the top, cool powers, dramatic fights. How is that supposed to relate to me? But the thing is, it does, because of this kind of pressure. You see it everywhere. The kid whose dad owns a business and tells him that one day it will all be yours, when all he wants is to move to another city and study, I don't know, you name it, graphical design or um, being a doctor, I don't know. Or maybe it's more subtle. You were the gifted kid growing up, always praised for being smart, the top of your class. Now you're older and suddenly the moment you feel stuck or tired or lost, if it feels like failure, like you're letting people down just by being human. And don't even get me started on kids of public figures. You look at people like Jaden Smith, Brooklyn Beckham. Every move they make gets dissected. Why doesn't he act more like his dad? Why isn't he using his platform better? Like they're not allowing to figure things out in private like the rest of us. Even outside of fame, you feel it. You're the oldest sibling, so you have to set the example, or you're the one the family counted on. So now any mistake feels like you're undoing years of sacrifice. They may never say it outright, but you feel it, and it weighs on everything. So that's what I want to talk about. Because the pressure, the kind you had never asked for but still have to carry, is not a plot device, but it's actually real. And in this part of the video, I want to explore how these characters deal with that. What breaks them, what helps them, what it actually means to build your own identity when everyone already thinks they know who you are supposed to be. Not in some exaggerated motivational speech way, just in another way. Hey, real quick before we move forward, if you're enjoying the video, please do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, if it's possible, leave a comment behind, because it helps more than you think with the algorithm, you know. Just helps me keep making cool, nice content for people like you. No pressure though, no pressure. Think of it like planting a seed. You support the growth of real thoughtful content. That's all I have to say. Alright, let's get back into it.
What's good, y'all? I'm K2 Kiyoshi, and one of my favorite anime and manga of all time is My Hero Academia. And one of the reasons why I really love this series is because how it breaks down this idea of succession and predecessors and just the stress and obsession that some people can go through in trying to reach these goals of replacing somebody that everyone loves. To kind of explain it the best way that I can, I gotta give y'all a little bit of context. So, within the world of My Hero Academia, their society is built upon this idea of heroes and villains and fighting, but it's really built upon one man, All Might, who people treat him damn near like a god. They treat him like this figure that's bigger than everyone, and people struggle so much to even achieve a fraction of what he means to all these people. And you have the main character Midoriya, who is given this once in a million chance to succeed him at a time when he's dwindling and his power is leaving. And in getting this chance to succeed his hero, to succeed this great legendary figure, Midoriya pushes himself. He pushes himself to limits that he didn't think were possible before. And while this is really inspiring at first, later in the series we see the depths that he goes to push himself, and it gets really toxic. Every time he has to really go all out or really push himself, His body gets mangled and broken and ripped apart. But in his mind, he does not care. Because in his head, that's what being a real hero is. That's what being like All Might is. And he pushes himself so far in that regard that it gets almost like scary. Like he does not care about his own well-being, and it's scary. And we get to the point later on in the series where you have the vigilante arc, where Midoriya isolates himself and he just hones in on this responsibility, on this mission, on this pressure of succeeding All Might, because in his eyes, in his mind, he thinks he's the only one that can really do it. Midoriya thinks that he has to shoulder this burden of replacing this huge figure all by himself. And we later see how that affects him. Like, he stops eating, he starts treating the people around him not that well, and he even starts to look less and less like a hero. Midoriya's response to this great pressure of having to succeed a monumental figure in his world is through obsession. And I always found that to be a really scary, cautionary tale for people, but also a really good lesson for people as well. It's in this arc where he fights his friends and he is taken back to UA that we really see what I think to be the message of all of My Hero Academia, but the real lesson that Midoriya learns, which is that he doesn't have to do it alone. Even though he has the power, he still has friends and family and the world that can all work together to replace, and beyond just replacing, move forward past where All Might left off. And I think that is really beautiful in this series. I think that is a really beautiful message. It's a really healthy way of dealing with this sort of obsession, unhealthy obsession with replacing somebody. It's in accepting the help of other people and realizing that you don't always have to do it all by yourself. And I think it's really poetic that this theme of growth through community versus this isolated, like, solitude type of growth is really inspiring within the show and the manga. It shows us that these burdens are not to be carried alone, and that one person alone does not always have to be solely responsible for changing the world. Everyone can change the world. Everyone can be a hero. And that's why I love this manga so much, bro. Because it tells everyone that we can all be heroes. It tells people that are put in these situations or that feel this pressure to succeed someone else that it doesn't have to just be you. Even if you're the only person in that profession, even if you're the only person moving in that direction, you can still take the inspiration, the help, the advice from the people around you to plan things out and move in that direction. And to look at another lens of perspective and pressure and how to deal with that pressure and the ways not to deal with that pressure, I think we can really look at Armin from Attack on Titan. Now, Armin's one of my favorite characters from Attack on Titan, and throughout the early series, we see him being this really logical center for the main trio. A lot of the early victories for the protagonists in the series come from Armin and his brain. The plans that he is able to make for the group and for his squad. He was the one that had to convince the whole military not to kill Eren when they first found out that he was a Titan. We wouldn't have the series without him. And his mind is like often relied on by the rest of the cast throughout the series, and it's used as a means to push further into victory. But what happens when those expectations from around you suddenly grow to immense levels? When what you're expected of from before suddenly becomes too big for you to handle. There is an arc in Attack on Titan that is my favorite arc in the entire series. The Return to Shiganshina arc, bro. At the very end of that arc, there's a dilemma where two characters' lives are at stake. Armin and his commander, Erwin. I don't know how to say his name, actually. Both of their lives are at stake, and only one of them can be brought back to life. The characters go back and forth in this episode, and it was a really emotional episode to watch, honestly. But in the end, it is not the commander that is brought back, it is Armin. And Armin's forced to live with this tremendous guilt of having been chosen instead of his commander Erwin. And his commander is, like, arguably and logically the more strategic choice to make in that dilemma. He's the one that's made just as many, like, in the moment, just saving the day type of calls that Armin did earlier in the series, and yet he wasn't picked to be brought back to life. Now, this guilt of Armin being brought back over the superior strategist, it leads him to internalizing all of this guilt deep within himself, and it turns into self-hatred. He feels like he doesn't deserve to be here. He feels like he doesn't deserve to be the one calling the shots when you have someone way better who could have made better choices, at least in his eyes, that was not brought back. He's not Commander Erwin, and he hates himself for even existing. And it's in the final season that we really see the depths of this self-hatred, and it was really sad for me to watch. There's a moment where Armin jumps into the mouth of a titan that used to be his friend's mother. It's an action that seems self-sacrificial, but it ends up being entirely an act of self-hatred and blame. A way for him to get rid of himself, a way for him to run away and just say, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'm not the one that you guys need me to be. And towards the end of the series, we have an even deeper and darker look into his mind when he's trapped within the paths and he's forced to sit with himself. He shouts and he blames himself for everything. And he yells that he should have already died long ago. While Midoriya's pressure of succession pushed him to limits of isolation and obsession, thinking he has to break and rip himself apart to an unrealistic ideal, all by himself, Armin is swallowed whole by the same pressure of succession, and it becomes the fuel that pushes him to think less and less of himself and his ability to lead. For Armin, his growth came from having to accept his place in the world in context to everyone else. There's a conversation that he has with Zeke within the past where he comes to a realization that after reflecting deeply on his life, perhaps he really was just born to run after Eren and Mikasa across that hill, simply experiencing what life has to offer, the good and the bad. I think through this realization, Armin is forced to accept who he is, that he is not and will never be Erwin, nor will he ever be the leader that everyone expects him to be, but rather, he's just him. He's Armin, and he knows what he's best at doing, and he does it knowing that the best he can do is what he can. I think that's why it's so poetic that he, of all people, is the last person to engage in a fight with Eren. He knows that this is the one thing that only he can do, and he embraces that and makes that hard decision, like he's always done. I think Armin and Midoriya are really just amazing examples of the two extremes that one person can go through when they have these immense pressures of replacing a monumental figure in their lives. Whether it be by obsessing over that goal and thinking that you have to replace this person solely by yourself, or ignoring your health and body all in pursuit of that goal, destroying it in the process, or internalizing that pressure to the point that you end up hating yourself for not being able to reach the same heights. These characters show us that through community and inspiration, as well as self-acceptance, that such pressure can be dealt with in a healthier way and not lead to one's self-destruction. But yeah, these are some pretty peak shows, I'm not gonna lie. These are some pretty peak stories, bruh.
So, do you ever get sometimes this feeling that your life isn't really yours? Like you were born into some story that was already written for you, and now you're just trying to follow the lines without really knowing why? Maybe your family has plans for you, or maybe society kinda just nudged you into a direction and said, yeah, go be that, a lawyer or a doctor or anything else. I mean, I don't know. And even if no one says it out loud, you can still kind of feel it. That pressure to be something, to succeed, and to impress others around you, to follow this invisible map, even if it leads somewhere you never asked to go. And it starts pretty early. When you're a kid and someone asks, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's not really a question though. There are right answers, and there are the ones that make people tilt their head and smile politely. Say doctor, lawyer, engineer, you get a gold star. Say a musician or a painter or anything else that you actually love, you get the weird look at you. The one that says, that's kinda cute, but what's your real plan? And little by little, you start shaping yourself around other people's comfort. You stop dreaming out loud, you become this projected version of who they think you should be. And sometimes you don't even notice that it's happening until you're way down the path, wondering whose footsteps you're following. Maybe because they don't feel like yours. That's why I think Boruto is a good example. He's not just trying to be a ninja, he's trying to be Naruto's kid. Imagine walking around, and before you say a word, people already think they know you. They expect you to be brave, strong, selfless, to be a second version of your father. But how do you grow when no one gives you room to be different? When your whole identity is glued to someone else's legend? So he kinda tries to push it back. He built his own gadgets, rebels, not to cause trouble, but to feel like he has something that's truly his. A place to breathe. And he's not angry without reason. He's just tired of performing, of trying to live up to a story he didn't write. And honestly, can you actually blame him? We see this all the time also with kid celebrities like Jaden Smith, Brooklyn Beckham. Kids who didn't ask for a spotlight but were born into it. And the second they try something that doesn't match the family brand, the world acts like they've lost their minds and it's all over the internet. Because people love legacy as long as it looks familiar, as long as it's predictable. But kids are not here to play sequels, they want their own story, their own arc. You know Aang, which is a totally different origin, but kinda like the same kind of weight. He didn't choose to be the Avatar, he just wanted to ride air scooters and goof off. And suddenly the universe drops world peace on his shoulders. Then he gets frozen in ice, wakes up 100 years later, and everything is wrecked. The world is at war, nations are gone, friends turn to dust, and people look at him like, "You're the Avatar, try to fix it." But the most people forget that he's just 12. And what's wild is that he could have fought like the rest, just become another warrior in the cycle. But he stops, he thinks, he decides maybe strength doesn't mean swinging first. Maybe peace isn't something you win, but maybe it's something you choose. And that takes a lot of guts. Aang doesn't just wear the title of the Avatar, he kinda reshapes it as all the other avatars advised him to kill Lord Ozai, but he didn't actually want to. Another really great example of this from the Avatar universe is Zuko. Zuko has got a different fight. He was born in the fire, literally. His dad isn't a symbol of hope, and Zuko spends most of his life chasing the approval of his dad, who will actually never give it. He believes that if he can just be strong enough, ruthless enough, that he'll earn his honor and respect back from his father. But every step closer to that version of honor chips away at who he really is, and it breaks him repeatedly. But when he finally steps off that path, when he turns around and walks toward what he believes in instead of what he was taught, that's when he becomes powerful. Not because he gets stronger, but because he gets clearer. He lets go of legacy, and in doing so, he becomes someone entirely new. Someone who he actually wants to be. And one last great example is Shinji from Neon Genesis Evangelion. He's not a chosen one, nor a mountain statue. He's just a 14-year-old kid, a quiet one who only hears from his dad when the world needs saving. And when it does, he gets shoved into a mech, told to protect humanity, and then left alone with trauma again and again. He doesn't really fight it back, he folds and fades into the background. Sometimes he stops eating or stops trying, starts to believe the world would be fine without him. And for anyone who's ever been the gifted kid, or the one who was supposed to make it, you know that feeling, the deep gnawing fear that maybe you're only lost when you perform, when you actually win. But Shinji gets a moment where he said that he wants to live, not because someone needs him, not because he's saving the world, just because he chooses to stay. And that small act is kind of a rebellion too, because surviving sometimes is the most radical thing you can do. And all of this, what I'm telling you, is not just only fiction. This is also in our world. Most of us are handed something, a name, a script, expectations we actually didn't ask for. Maybe it's family pressure, maybe it's cultural, and maybe it's just the invisible voice in your head telling you that you're not good enough unless you're exceptional. But you don't have to wear every label they give you. You don't have to carry a legacy like a burden. And you get to choose what parts of the story you keep and what parts you rewrite. You can stop, think, and breathe for a minute. You can say that this version of success is not the success I'm actually looking for. And whatever path you take from here, even if it's a messy one, even if it takes time, it's still yours. And that honestly is, for me, enough to begin. So, if you have stayed all the way to the end, seriously, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Consider a like, subscribe, maybe drop a comment. It really helps with the algorithm a lot. So do your boy a favor, will ya? Thank you in advance. And a massive shout out to K2 Kiyoshi for being part of this video. He makes some great, really great videos, so go check him out. I'll leave a link in my description, and show him some love, yeah. And to you again, thank you for being here. That's all I have to say. Take care of yourself, drink some water, stretch, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.